Well, good evening, everybody. Sorry for the short delay, but it's going to be well worth it. Welcome to our regulars, and if you're a first timer with us, then welcome to you too. My name is Alan Friedman. I'm Vice President of the Australian Jewish Association, and I am the MC for this evening. And also visible on your screens are David Adler, President of the AJA, as well as our guest for tonight, Fleur Hassan Nahoum, who we will introduce formally in a moment. Tonight's topic is something on all our minds at the moment, i.e. the current situation in Israel. And the format will be pretty much as usual. We're going to chat with Fleur for about 30 minutes, and then we'll open up the discussion to questions from the audience. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, just a reminder, the way to get our attention if you want to ask a question is to electronically raise your hand. And you can do that by clicking on the participants or the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen. And there's a little picture of a hand. If you click that, that lets us know that you want to ask a question. The chat function is going as usual. And as usual, I do remind people just to keep the discussion to tonight's topic. It's very easy to get into deep discussions when it comes to Israel. Now, I would say that everybody watching tonight would have certainly been glued to their TVs, computers, and mobile phones to follow the events unfolding in Israel and Gaza. Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, Fleur Hassan Nahoum, is in charge of foreign relations, international economic development, and tourism, and is at the forefront of this consultation. By way of background, Fleur was born in London and grew up in Gibraltar, which is a British territory on Spain's south coast, and I believe they have a very big rock there. Politics was obviously in the family genes, as her father served as Chief Minister and Mayor of Gibraltar, and her younger sister is a Member of Parliament in Gibraltar and leader of the Together Gibraltar Party. Fleur returned to London, where she qualified as a barrister and then became campaign director of World Jewish Relief, the main Jewish charitable organisation in the UK. And in 2001, she made Aliyah to Israel. She joins us now to discuss the origins of this military conflict, although I would probably call it a war, and to give us an update on the situation. Fleur, welcome to the AJA, and thank you very much for your time.
Of course, thank you so much, Alan, and thank you all of you in the diaspora in this particular community for always worrying about us, supporting us, and having our backs.
Okay, so Fleur, let's just cut to the chase. Can you just give us an update from Jerusalem? What's it like at the moment, and how normal are your days?
Well, the truth is that Jerusalem, it's a strange thing that happened, because for about 3 weeks, the atmosphere in Jerusalem was horrible, dangerous. At night, rioting almost every night during the Ramadan period. And the Sheikh Jarrah protests and any excuse that they could find in order to create a hostile environment. And I feel like there were 7 rockets that landed here the first night. And they didn't land in Jerusalem itself, they landed right outside. But I almost feel like that, those rockets kind of launched a boil that was growing, this resentment and hostility. And since then, things in Jerusalem have actually been calmer than anywhere else in the country. And this is exactly what Hamas and Iran, their backer, wanted. They were only interested in Jerusalem in order to make the linkage between Gaza and Jerusalem and place Hamas as the defenders of their faith. That's what they wanted. Once they made that linkage with the riots up in Temple Mount and with the first rockets, that's it. They moved out of Jerusalem and they focused in the rest of the country. And because the linkage was already done. And that's the only thing they really wanted. Jerusalem is almost 40% Arab. So they can't now, risk, too many dead on the Arab side here in Israel. And so once those first rockets landed, things calm down. And my days at the moment are pretty normal, except that, of course, it's a very depressed atmosphere outside. People are worried, so they're not going out so much. Tomorrow, I have the privilege of hosting a group of children from the Gaza border, from the Gaza area, the Gaza border area in southern Israel, so they can have a day of calm and a fun day for kids where they don't have to worry about running in shelters, because Jerusalem at the moment is pretty safe.
And what about on the Temple Mount? Has all the violence abated there?
That seems to have also calmed down. Look, remember, Ramadan's ended, Eid has ended. It's not the same religious fervors. Iran got what they wanted, and Hamas, they caused the conflict. Now they've moved on to greener pastures. So everything is much calmer. We're not hearing of any issues here. Now and again, there's a stone throwing, or much calmer than they were a month ago.
Yeah, and I would suspect that the country is very united at the moment. I'm just wondering, what do some of the left-wing parties say at a time like this? How do they react when you're in this situation?
Well, you know, the left wing in Israel is all about mea culpa. You know, let's blame ourselves for everything. Because it couldn't possibly be the other side's fault. Too woke for that. So in Israel, there's two narratives from the left. One is Bibi Netanyahu has made all this happen for his own political good, which of course is something impossible, even if he would have wanted to, which of course he wouldn't, because he's a patriot. He didn't do, and he couldn't have planned but that's one of the narratives, how Hamas and Bibi have a symbiotic relationship of propping each other up. So that's one of the narratives going around. The other narrative is that we provoked this. We provoked this by Sheikh Jarrah and by confrontation. Amount. Of course, what they don't realize is that they cynically use Sheikh Jarrah war to defend Jerusalem.
Yeah, I'm not sure if other people are noticing it, but your signal is a little shaky, Fleur. You sort of almost break up a little bit. But anyway, we'll just keep going because we seem to get you back whenever that happens. David, I'll just flick over to you if you've got any questions for Fleur, and then I can ask another couple.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, and thank you, Fleur, for making time for us, because I know it's tough times for you. Tell me, is the Palestinian Authority, after many years, was supposed to have an election, but of course it was cancelled, and possibly one of the reasons is that it looked as if Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad would actually win. Now, to what extent do you think what we're seeing now is actually Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad asserting their relevance? They couldn't do it through an election, so they're doing it through fairly dramatic, violent political statement.
So that's a great question. I wrote actually an article about this, which I'm happy to share the link with all of you in the Jerusalem Post. I think it's both, what you're saying, both. So let me explain what I believe happened. The Palestinian Authority were looking for an excuse and a reason to cancel an election they never wanted. They never wanted this election. They've been 16 years in power from a 4-year term. The reason they don't want the election is because they know that Hamas will win. But not only are Fatah divided amongst themselves, they were actually running, Fatah was running in 3 separate lists. Firstly.
Right.
Secondly, and Hamas and Islamic Jihad and all those other guys were running in 1 list. So they knew they were in trouble. They'd promised the European Union an election. They'd promised Biden an election, and they knew they were in trouble. So what do you do when you're in trouble? You blame Jerusalem. So what did they say? And I want to really explain this point. They said their original excuse is the Jerusalem The government of Israel is not giving them permission include the East Jerusalem. Jerusalem is not involved, they're not having an election. Now, that is a completely farcical argument, and I'll tell you why. A, we actually don't even know if they put in a request to the Israeli government. We don't know, okay? Even if they did, even if they put in a request to the Israeli government, we're talking about 6,000 votes that have to vote through a post office ballot, as opposed to 150,000 votes that can vote in any of the neighboring towns of Jerusalem that are under the 3%, 2% of the vote is affected by the excuse that they were using, if the excuse is correct.
Okay.
So they were really clutching at straws.
David, just before you go on, somebody's contacted me in the chat group and suggested that if people turn off their videos, the signal might get a little stronger. So not you, Fleur. No.
Maybe the problem is with me.
Doesn't matter. It might be that if other people turn off their video cameras, it might help a bit. So people can try that if they want to. Sorry, go ahead, David.
Fleur, one of the things we've seen, which has been quite shocking in the last week or 10 days, has been the Arab Israeli citizens rioting in Lod, in Bat Yam, in other places. Now, Israel's very, very good at dealing with external enemies, but when a proportion of our own citizens seem to have adopted, an attitude like Hamas and Islamic Jihad on their side, how on earth can Israel manage this? What's your view on the uprising of the Arab Israelis, and how can Israel deal with it?
To me, this is a worse and more worrying concern, almost, than the external enemies. Because we know who the Hamas are, we know who they are, and we know how to monitor them. We know how to find out what they're doing. Now, with Israeli citizens, it's a different story. But make no mistake about it, this is a problematic minority of Israeli Arab society. This is not the mainstream. I'm very connected to the mainstream. In the Likud with me. So this is not the mainstream, is controlling the Islamic Jihad and Hamas elements within Israeli Arab society. Okay. And another thing we need to do is learn how to be more involved in his society. And we haven't done enough to curb the violence amongst themselves. And what's happened is that they've just turned their guns on us. And so we need to be more involved. Now, if we had normal members of Knesset from the Arab parties, they would have taken care of their own people's needs. But they're busy being the spokespeople for the Palestinian Authority and not caring about their own constituents.
Fleur, I'm going to try another technical suggestion. Someone suggested that
so we also have to
we turn off your video, which I can do from here.
1 second, maybe I'll just connect with my phone. What about that?
Well, I think we should be good now. I've just turned off your video, but your audio is still running.
Okay, are you still with us, Fleur?
I can do this through my phone.
No, this is fine. This is fine now.
This seems to be better.
Okay.
Fleur, the international media is something which seems to have turned almost universally against Israel. I mean, there are some exceptions. We have some people who are very much on side in Australia, and AJA has been doing everything we can to assist. I want to play a 20-second video just to show people a little segment out of Al Jazeera that occurred a few days ago, and just listen to what they say very carefully.
No audio, David.
No audio?
No.
Okay. Right. Okay, we'll have to set that up again later.
Okay.
Okay. Back to you, Alan.
Okay, Fleur, just while we're talking about the media, I heard your interview with the BBC, and this was probably about a week ago, and I was just staggered at the aggressive tone that was taken with you. I guess I wasn't surprised, but it was still quite disturbing. Have you given many interviews, and what sort of reaction are you getting from the various media outlets around the world?
Yeah, I'm spending my time giving interviews at the moment. That's what I'm doing. That's my reserve duty, let's say. And I'm not surprised. I actually expect this one-sided aggressive questions, and I'm a trained barrister, so bring it on is what I say. Nothing to be afraid of. We've got justice and truth on our side, and I give as good as I take, so don't worry about it.
Well, I think what gets lost on people is that anybody that goes into Gaza has to get through the scrutineering process of Hamas, and they're going to be watching and listening to everything that they do. So by definition, they're not going to be able to deliver an unbiased report, are they? So, and yet every news report, or just about every news report that we're seeing in this country, starts with the pictures of people in Gaza running in all directions and crying and screaming and all of that. I just find it. I just wonder, do you think it's actually worse than it was last time?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part of your question.
I just asked you if you thought that the media reporting of events this time is worse than in 2014.
The truth is, it's hard to tell what's.
I think we've lost the audio now a bit, have we?
It's all bad. It's all bad. Since 1967, have complete Palestinian narrative about victim. 1 second. Let me try and hook in my phone.
Okay.
1 second.
Okay.
I think the problem in Israel is that everybody's got 3 mobile phones and they're probably all using them at once.
I'm not sure what the situation is, but I thought Israel technology was supposed to be first class and seamless and better than Australia. But
well,
it sounds like
whoever makes the iron domes, we ought to get them onto the internet.
Okay.
As Fleur read.
She's still there, I can see. Okay.
Are you still there, Fleur?
Fleur, you need to yeah, you're back with us?
Okay, this should now be better. I've now taken over my husband's dental clinic and kicked him out. And he has much better internet reception than in my house.
Okay, now that seems better. Fleur, I'll just ask you another couple of questions, and then we'll go to the audience. I'm sure the audience has got lots of questions.
I've got that video working now.
Oh, okay, let's have a look at that.
Hopefully.
I think there's a problem with audio on Zoom, just saying, with videos.
Well, I've got it. Let's try this out, and here we go.
Online to the streets, this poster in London reading, "Israel's killing children again. Enjoy your weekend." And in New York, Palestinian Lives Matter protests are taking place across the city with thousands in attendance. Pro-Israeli groups online like Australian Jewish Association are calling these posters and protests anti-Semitic. But this
Well, there you are.
that's
Did you catch that? That we got a call out on Al Jazeera for saying that some of the content of the protests were anti-Semitic. Have you detected that in your interactions with the international media, Fleur?
Well, I don't think the media thinks it's anti-Semitic, but the protests, which they refuse to call anti-Semitic, have all become anti-Semitic, which is incredible because, you know, we hear this distorted argument the whole time that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Oh, so then why are you going around London, you know, shouting, we're going to kill all the Jews and rape your women? You know, of course it's anti-Semitic.
yeah.
You know, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. It's just the denial of our national rights rather than our religious rights or our racial rights. But it's all the same. And the media does not pick up on it, and the media doesn't want to talk about it. But that's certainly an incredible, it's amazing that we're living these times in 2021, and it's still politically correct to be anti-Semitic under the guise of Israel. And nobody seems to have a problem with it. And very few people are calling it out, and very few brave politicians in the diaspora are calling it out.
Just one last one from me, Fleur, and I think we'll go to the audience. We saw Israel attack this building, which was the media centre, and they said that there was Hamas infrastructure there. I just wonder, the fact that they destroyed this building, would that have made any difference to the reporting coming out of Gaza? Would that have made it harder for all of these foreign reporters and correspondents to do their job?
What, the fact that there's no building?
Yeah.
Probably.
So perhaps that's been a bit of a...
Ultimately, we are here to defend our people. We are here to stop the infrastructure of terror. And if they're renting office space next to that infrastructure, well, next time don't. That's it.
Yes, fair enough. Okay, we'll go to audience questions. So I've got Ron, Freddie, Prabhath, Mary, Hugh, Terry, Debbie and Leon. So please, just one question per person, otherwise we won't get you all in. We'll start with you, Ron, so please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, loud.
Good evening, Fleur. Lovely to meet you. Thank you. Very quickly, Israel has an opportunity to get the remains of the soldiers from the last Gaza conflict, and also the two hostages that are kept there, which is a non-military thing. And I'm just wondering why Israel is not taking up that opportunity.
Well, we really don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but I can tell you, because I'm connected to the lobbyists that are working on this, that we are certainly calling out for Israel not to cease fire unless the bodies come back. We may even have a live hostage, Mengistu, the poor Ethiopian boy with psychological problems who by mistake crossed over the border. We don't know if he's alive or dead. They want some type of Gilad Shalit deal, and I believe we should keep hitting them until they give us back our boys.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Freddie, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I just want to give a quote from Pope Francis, which is not, I'm happy with that. Many innocent people have died, among them also children. This is terrible and unacceptable. But he didn't mention about firing missile from Palestine is not acceptable. And sounds like he's giving a mutual support to Hamas. And do you think we have a good relationship with Vatican?
With the Vatican, I think, is that what you're asking?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you know, look, I want to say, I'm a mother of 4, and it bothers me to see pictures of displaced children, displaced families, and death and destruction. Absolutely. I think anybody with a heart does not want to see this. But ultimately, the question is, how can a sovereign country accept thousands of rockets coming in to our sovereign country from a place that we left in 2005. They can't say that this is because of an occupation or oppression or whatever the buzzwords they like to use. They can't say that. And so you have to ask yourself, why are they actually sending the rockets? And it's very clear, because this is an existential issue. This is not a territorial issue. This is about Jews being here at all. And so we cannot afford to lose one single war, and we have to fight back. And we are more conscious about the price on innocence than they are. They put their innocence in harm's way, and we work in order to ensure that their innocents are not in harm's way, both ours and theirs. And that's the most we can do. We call up, we warn people that we're going to destroy the buildings. What country does that? What country does that? Only the state of Israel, only the IDF, which is the most moral and ethical army in the world. And don't get confused by the propaganda. And so ultimately, what I wish for the Palestinian people is for them to have the leaders they deserve, better leaders that puts their interests before money and conflict and foreign agents.
Yes, well said. Okay, Prabhath, your turn. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
He's not responding.
Okay, all right.
Am I on?
Yes, now you are.
Now. Yeah.
Yes. Now, thank you. I'm just listening as I don't have many questions, but I want to show my support as a Gentile Christian to the nation of Israel. It's a joy to know the light of the world. So therefore, I'm very interested in the matters of Israel. I just want to show my support and my prayers for the nation of Israel. So thank you.
Prabhat.
Thank you very much, Prabhath. Let's move on to Hugh. Hugh is in the UK, so please unmute yourself, Hugh.
Right, can you hear me this time?
Yes, we're good.
Excellent. I made a comment in the chat just now, and so I'm just really asking that same question. Last night, the BBC's Middle East editor, Jeremy Bowen, broadcast one of the very worst reports I've ever seen him do. And the BBC, as part of its charter, because it's a government-funded body by Act of Parliament, does boast accuracy and impartiality, and many people actually trust it. Among other things, his report accused Israel of land confiscation, which is a blatant falsehood. My personal view is that his journalist visa should be immediately cancelled and that he should be expelled from the country, because it's actually in Israel's security.
You're going to need to get to your question, please.
To do that. That would make the BBC and put them in a very difficult situation. I just wanted to ask Fleur what you think about that.
Look, it's a double-edged sword, Hugh. You know, we're a society that prides itself on freedom of expression, free society of liberty. If we start muting people, that even people who are doing slander and libel against us, it's a fine line. And I think we're in a lose-lose with this one. We really are in a lose-lose with this one. I myself, for example, people say to me, don't appear on this news outlet and don't appear on that news outlet. But then if I don't, where are our voices? So it really is a double-edged sword. And I will always err on the side of liberty and freedom of expression. Let them slander and lie. Like Golda Meir said, I would rather have a bad image than be dead. So let us have a bad image.
Okay. Mary, you're next, and then we've got Andy and Terry, and there's a few more after that. So Mary, please unmute yourself.
Okay. Hey, hi, thank you for allowing me to attend this event. I actually didn't realize it was such a forum, which is a little bit overwhelming because I didn't do a lot of research, but I'm also glad because I have so many questions. First, I want to introduce myself properly and make it clear that I am a member of media. I currently work for Sky News Australia in Sydney, and I have been personally responsible for doing my best to get interviews. And Fleur, I would love to have you on our network. If we can arrange that, I think that would be great.
With pleasure, Mary. Thank you.
Amazing. Really, just to really understand the Israeli perspective as to why the state feels that it has to give such a heavy hand, and I'm asking that for those points, because you're right, in the international media, and I have worked in Turkey. I have worked for Al Jazeera. You can look me up. My name is Mary Saliba. I have roots from Lebanon, but my family is also Christian. So,
Mary, we're just going to have short questions. We've got a whole list of people there.
Sorry, I just really, to everybody, and to Fleur, to you, the narrative is in international media is Israel has got the power. Israel is a state. Israel has the military. Israel has all this capability, and you are picking on a group of terrorists who are nowhere near equipped as you guys. This is
okay. We'll let.
So my answer is why start with us? They know that. They know we've had to arm ourselves since 1948 when they tried to obliterate us. People forget, if Israel loses one war, just one war, there's a Jewish genocide here. So we can't afford to lose one war. And so, yes, we're prepared. And yes, we're the military power and all of that. So if they know that, why are they doing this? What do they have to gain? And more importantly, Mary, who is arming them? And there's one address, and this is Iran. Iran is the enemy of the Middle East. Iran wants to drive a wedge between Israel and the Gulf countries. And I've been very involved in the peace building efforts of the Abraham Accords. I've created 2 organizations. I've been to Dubai 5 times. And I'm very, very involved on Israel's behalf in peace building. I'm very involved in peace building between East and West Jerusalem. But Hamas and Iran don't want this. They don't want Israel normalized in the Gulf. They don't want Israel normalized between Arabs and Jews and Muslims and Christians and Jews. They don't want that. So that's who's arming them. That's who's egging them on. And we get criticized for defending our people. Of course, we're stronger. If the bully is smaller than the biggest guy in the playground, don't mess with that guy. That's the bottom line. And if they do, go ahead.
Thanks, Fleur. And Mary, just before we move away, I just want to thank you and thank Sky News on behalf of AJA, because you do such a fantastic job. And Fleur, I can highly recommend Sky News Australia if ever you want to speak to, or if ever they want to speak to you. Okay, well, Henry, your turn.
For Mary to have my contact details and to do an interview.
Thanks, Henry. Please unmute yourself. You're talking, Henry, but you're muted. No, Henry, you're still muted. Okay, let's, while you're working out what to do, let's go to Andy. Andy, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I'm unmuted now.
Okay, hold on, Andy, you're next.
Hi, Henry Greener here. Can you hear me?
Yes, keep it short, please, Henry.
Okay, Fleur, I just wanted to say that nothing's been mentioned about the United States and Biden and the pro-Trump era, and how do you think America can do anything, if they can do anything, to put an end to this conflict?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Whether they're doing anything to end the conflict?
Or yes, or whether they're capable of doing anything to end the conflict.
I'm not sure. Look, I'm not sure. I think that that they understand that we have to get rid of the terrorist infrastructure, and I think they understand that we need to restore our the deterrence against Israel. So I think they understand that. I'm not sure how many more days they're gonna, relieve the pressure and then start pressuring. I just, I'm sure you guys know Michael Oren, who used to be an MK.
Sure.
And people ask what's the difference between now and the Obama years, which for us, of course, were a catastrophe in terms of foreign policy. He strengthened Israel's enemies at the cost of Israel. And Michael Oren said something very smart to me. I interviewed him for my podcast, and he said, you know what? Biden is not Obama, but America is not the same America. And I think that's an important thing to bear in mind. Maybe the influence has waned. I don't know. I'm not sure it's a good thing for Israel that it has. But you have different players now. You have Gulf players, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Egypt, you have Turkey, you have other players stepping up and getting involved for the good and for the bad. And so maybe America will start pressurizing us in another few days. Maybe they won't. They send an envoy who apparently is friendly with Hamas. So I really don't know, but I don't feel America here like in the Trump years or like in the Obama years for the detriment of Israel and all our peace-loving neighbors, including the UAE and Saudi Arabia. There's a joke in the diplomatic world. One good thing Obama did was unite us with Saudi Arabia and the UAE and the Gulf states against him.
Very true. Okay, I've got Andy, Terry, and Debbie. So Andy, please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. I live in Israel. I'm an American who made Aliyah 15 years ago. And one thing I've learned, the words that we use sometimes hurt us. Occupied territory, what does that tell you? That we're in a place we don't belong? Palestine. Well, Palestine, yes, was before the state of Israel. However, it was Ottoman Palestine, or it was Mandate Palestine. Why don't we as Jews use those words? Why don't we explain history? Because if we don't speak up, nobody will.
Well, I totally agree with you, Andy. Years ago, when I understood your point, I stopped calling the West Bank, or certainly never called it really the occupied territories. It's Judea and Samaria. It's our ancestral homeland. We have every right to be there. Without it, we're in danger as a country. It's more than our buffer zone. And there's no reason why Jews can't live in certain areas. We're not going to go back to Judean concepts. So I do understand what you're saying. I do think words hurt. And just so you all know, Sheikh Jarrah, which is one of the invented provocations for this conflict, is actually called Shimon HaTzadik. So you can all start referring to Sheikh Jarrah as Shimon HaTzadik, which is the area where Jews settled around Simon's tomb before Sheikh Jarrah was Sheikh Jarrah.
Yes, well done. Terry, please unmute yourself. Then I've got Debbie, Leon.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, good evening. I've been a Zionist all my life, and I've seen conflicts come and go. And one common theme is always that Israel is just about to get the job done when the international community insists that it stops shooting. What are the chances this time with, France trying to get a UN Security Council resolution, everybody calling for a ceasefire? They don't do it anywhere else. What are the chances that Israel are going to go in and, as far as is possible, finish off Hamas?
Well, I think that look, this has always been our problem. It happened also in the Yom Kippur War. When we were really ahead, we were asked to stop, even though it was a war we never started. This is Israel's history. We don't start a war. Aggression is done against us. We defend ourselves. We start to win. We're really going to go in deep, and we're told to stop. That really has happened again and again. I don't know. I've got a feeling it will happen again, and we don't live in an island. But I think, honestly, this time, I think Israeli public opinion, which is really the only thing that anybody should be listening to inside Israel, is about finishing off their infrastructure and sending them back 100 years.
Yeah. Debbie, your turn. Please unmute yourself.
Don't see a Debbie.
Is Debbie there, or maybe she's gone?
No.
No? Okay.
Someone else.
Leon, you can step up, please, if you unmute yourself.
Oh, good evening, Fleur. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can, Leon.
Yeah. First, I'd like to express my hope that Israel's military power continues to grow immeasurably and continues to grow immeasurably. And if the anti-Semites in the media don't like it, let them eat their hearts out. Now, my question, have you heard of Mati Friedman, Israeli journalist and author?
I have.
Now, when you are being interviewed, do you recommend that your interviewers read his expose of the modus operandi of a lot of the media journalists who work so unprofessionally without any conscience and tell blatant lies? I think that his expose should be disseminated as far as possible. What do you think?
Look, it's not like the information's not out there, Leon. It's not that. People just are blinkered and they just want to believe their narrative, or they've chosen a narrative and that's it. Most people don't care, let's be honest. The people who do care, then you've got your hardcore pro-Palestinian who hate us, we're the evil aggressors. We shouldn't be here to begin with on any part of the land. You're never going to convince those people. What the people I feel sorry for, I'll tell you, are the young people in campuses, because when they go into campus, they're given a choice. You're either pro-human rights or you're pro-Israel. You can't be both. The things don't go together. And I spend a lot of my time lecturing to students in campuses, first of all, to give them a clear picture of what's going on. And secondly, to take pride in their people and what we've achieved and what we've done and how we are a light unto the nations and how we impact the world with our inventions and with our technology. And so ultimately, yes, everybody should read Leon, and everybody could read, Conor Cruz O'Brien's The Siege. Fantastic book that gives you a real perspective. Are they going to? No. And so we have to kind of understand how to play that game, the game of social media and the game of messaging and the game of sound bites. And what I'm very disappointed in, and this is why I'm doing this constantly, is that Israel is still not on the PR train it should be, with all the clever people that we have around the world involved in PR and involved in messaging. And we've been arrogant about putting together an army of PR experts. I've put a plan together, I've sent it to government people, and I've been ignored for 10 years. So now I'm just doing it myself.
Okay, Gary, please unmute yourself.
You mentioned you're involved in the Abraham Accord, and that's my question. How is that holding up?
Well, that's a great question. I tell you, like I said earlier, I created two organizations. One's called the UAE Israel Business Council, and the other one is called the Gulf Israel Women's Forum. And these are basically the infrastructure of peace building. I have a lot of very deep friendships in the Gulf states, people that I'm very, very close to, and they were confused because unfortunately, even after the Abraham Accords, their press remained very biased and they were only hearing one side of the story. And last week, I did a briefing a briefing to my UAE colleagues, friends, and influencers so that they could get both sides of the story. And thank God. And I said to them, there's no uncomfortable question that I won't answer. Just everything you have in your stomach, let's get it out. Because if we want a productive, long-lasting relationship, you can't let things fester. And so bring it all out, and I'll try and answer as honestly as possible. And we did that, and it was a really, really good experience. And I think our relationships are stronger for it.
Okay, it's Anthony's computer. I suspect that's not Anthony. Please unmute yourself.
Unmute.
That's it. Now you're right.
My question was actually about the Abraham Accords. Yes, I'm Hazel, the better half. Fleur, thank you, really enjoyable, and thank you to the AJ for all your wonderful presentations. So just quickly, what will the impact be of this war on the Abraham Accords? Do you think they are going to still hold up?
Yes, I'm holding them up. I'm joking. No, we created, this is why we did it, right at the beginning, right from the get-go, even before the Abraham Accords were signed. We created two organizations that are 50-50, Israelis and Emiratis. And then I created a women's organizations from all over the Gulf. Now, people at the time thought, oh, what does it matter as long as there's business? But these organizations are what's holding up this peace deal in terms of the goodwill. You know, nobody's going to renege on the peace deals because there's much more that unites us than what divides us. But what we don't want is a cold relationship like we've had with Jordan and Egypt. We want a warm relationship. We really do. And like I said, I've got 3 WhatsApp groups between Israelis and Emiratis. We've been chatting the whole time. I did my session and they're constantly calling me, how are you? Are you safe? These people are our cousins. They understand it. I'm sure everybody else understood as well. And this will hold the test of time. The Accords are here to stay. And part of why this is happening is because Iran and Hamas want to drive a wedge between Israel and the Arab world. And we're not going to let it happen because this is a people-to-people peace. This is not a peace just of leaders.
Fleur, do you think that any of the other Gulf states will step up, or are they a bit too nervous now?
Well, I think they were nervous because Trump left, to be honest. I think that if Trump had stayed, we might have had a few more. I think the two to watch out for are Saudi and Oman. Both have young leaders who want normalization with Israel, but older fathers who are still very much stuck in the traditional, Palestine is first rhetoric. And so I believe in quiet, under the radar normalization with these countries. I'm involved in some of those things, which I can't talk about. And I am very optimistic that in the future, these other countries will join the Abraham Accords. It might take longer. It might be problematic in the short term, but in the long term, our common enemy, Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood, are much more in our interest to band against. And also, of course, the business ties that Israel brings. Israel brings to the Gulf a new air of innovation, which they need. And they bring to us a gateway to the East. And I believe that nobody can stop this train now. And I'm very happy about it.
Now, I think Rachel was there and then she dropped off. So Rachel, if you want to ask your question, then please raise your hand again. Just while we wait a moment, Fleur, what language do you speak when you speak to the women of the Gulf states?
English.
Oh,
In
okay.
Fact, most Gulf countries, their young people are educated in the UK or the US. Their English is better than their Arabic. And I feel, as somebody who's British and been educated in the UK, and also as a Sephardi woman who comes from heritage of Jews from Arab countries, my mother's from Morocco, my husband's family are from Iraq, I have lots in common with my Emirati and Gulf counterparts, lots.
Yes, I can see you'd be a good person to do that. Okay, Rachel, you'll be the last question, so please unmute yourself. I think you already are, and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Fleur. Thank you for your talk tonight. My problem seems to be never-ending. At the Gaza war in 2014, I lost my best friend of 20 years who started posting anti-Palestinian rhetoric on my page. my Facebook page, not her own. We have never spoken since. And only 2 days ago, I noticed a WhatsApp friend had added a new tag to her name, From the River to the Sea. And I said to her, looks like you're supporting the Palestinians. Here's a link and I sent her a link with information about Israel's actual role in this conflict versus Hamas. And I said, please read this content. It will give you a different viewpoint. And she wrote back and said, I think I've got enough things to read about this conflict. And I thought to myself, am I going to lose friends every time there's a conflict between Israel and Gaza? And how can I appeal to the whole world if I can't even make a difference one-on-one? If I can't make a difference to the people closest to me? So I'm really scared to post general stuff pro-Israel on my Facebook page anymore, because it just brings out all the trolls and all the anti-hate, all the Israel haters. What do we do? How do we fight this one-on-one?
You keep fighting. You know, I get messages of hatred every day. You can't even begin to imagine the vile messages that I get. I don't care. Ultimately, if you are getting those messages, it means that you're doing something to bother them. You're doing something to pierce this very one-sided narrative. So Rachel, don't feel discouraged. Well, all you can do is appear as the rational, sane voice and say, there's two sides to this story. This is not black and white, nothing ever is. And perhaps let's put ourselves in the position, you don't have to appear to be unbalanced. And again, explain to them that if they deny your right to self-determination as a Jew, that's anti-Semitism. And don't be scared. You will, of course, provoke the wrath of these people, but they're just looking for an excuse, Rachel. So give it to them and fight back. That's what I say.
Yeah, and that's what we say too. Look, we've come up to time, Fleur. We promised you we'd finish on time. So I want to thank you so much again for joining us. You've got a lot of friends here in Australia. If ever you need some help from us, we'd be delighted to help you. But you know, you're a fantastic spokesperson, and we think you're doing a great job. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Alan, and thank you all. Thank you all for your concern and for your support. And you know, we will win this thing.
Yeah,
we will.
Absolutely. Just before we go, David, do you want to quickly put up that the next week's?
Yeah, I'll run through that again, but let me say also that tomorrow afternoon, published in the Spectator magazine, is an article that I've written that looks at the causation of the conflict. And I sent a copy to you, Fleur. I hope that you'll have a chance to have a quick look at it. Very consistent with a lot of the points you've made this evening. Next week, we have Anand Kerr, who's the legal advisor to the Israeli government Druze Heritage Centre. So we're having a session on the Druze. And also let you know, and we've emailed the details of an event that's being run by the Southern Cross Alliance for Israel, which is a pro-Israel Christian organisation, a panel that's being held the prior day, and they've invited me to be one of the speakers on their panel, so we're looking forward to that. And finally, as we always do, we ask you to support HAA if you're not yet actively doing so. Three things: join the email list at the website jewishassociation.org.au, follow the Facebook page, and please also go to the website if you're not yet a member, join. And we do need donations at this time. We've geared up our support for Israel. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay, that's all we have for tonight. So thanks again to Fleur.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything, and we're thinking of you. Thanks to everybody for joining in. It was a fabulous night.
Thank you all.
And so nothing else to say except from me. So good night to everybody, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye for now.